Hi, everybody. Welcome to our first ever podcast episode.
What are we going to talk about?
This is Reviewable, our podcast.
What are we going to talk about?
So, my name is Micah. This is my husband, Brayden. And we love movies and TV shows and talking about all of it and all the things that we enjoy. And so, we decided we were going to start a podcast talking about movies, TV shows, books, and video games.
Yeah, that's it. That's what we're going to do. And we're going to try and do, it's going to be a little bit fluid. It's not going to be super rigid. It's the same, not going to be the same every time, but we're going to try to watch or have finished a movie, a show, a book, and a game sometimes by the end of a week. So we're going to talk about those things. And then at the end of all of that, we're going to discuss something that each of us did or saw or read separate from each other, which is kind of weird because most of the books we read are separate from each other as well. So it's almost like there's two little parts where we're going to be talking about things that we did separately, but it's going to be devoted to things that we did separately. So maybe one week we both read the same book, but we both watched a different show.
Yeah.
So that's how we're going to try and do this. But like I said, there's going to be weeks where we didn't finish a show or we didn't finish a book, and the episode just might be shorter.
Which is okay.
Yeah, right. So this is actually our second time recording this, but what happened? We couldn't get the video files to work.
Are beginners, and that's okay.
Yeah. So we're just going to be trying to remember what we said about the things we're going to talk about today. And we're just going to try and go verbatim, right?
Or, whatever happens.
We're going to riff?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to riff. Okay, we can riff.
But let's just jump into the movie.
Okay. So it's Killers of the Flower Moon, which is Martin Scorsese's apparently 26th movie that he's directed.
Jeez.
Yeah, he's been around for a long, long time. He was, little fun fact, he was really good friends with Steven Spielberg and George Lucas when they were all coming up as directors. Yeah.
That's cool.
Pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
And they would share their ideas of what they were working on together. And for my money, I probably prefer Scorsese out of those three.
Really?
As my favorite. Yeah. But I mean, all three of them have done amazing things. George Lucas, obviously, Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and Spielberg, Indiana Jones, and a million other things. But I think Scorsese's really killed it with some of his movies that he's done. Some of his movies are some of my favorite movies I've ever watched. So I was really excited for this. When we got out of it, I felt like Micah did not like it.
Well, give the synopsis of what the movie's about.
Yeah, so this is the true story of the Osage Native Americans, the Osage Indians, back in the
early 20s, I think.
1920s.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was a group of Native Americans that was pushed from territory to territory. They ended up getting pushed onto Oklahoma, which was thought to be at the time just really terrible land. So basically the government was screwing them over and trying to put them somewhere where they couldn't really farm. But they discovered oil under their land. So kind of backfired on the government, didn't it?
We love that.
And they became the richest people per capita on the planet when they found that oil. I don't know for how long that lasted, but again, this is a true story. This happened, and it's based on a book. And what ended up occurring was after they found land and became the richest people in the world, a bunch of them just started dying off, being killed, murdered. And their rights to the oil, their rights to the land that held the oil, started moving to other people. And that was why they were being killed. People were killing them to get the oil, basically, so they could get the money. And this is the story of that. Yeah. Following a particular family. So The main characters in this story are a lady named Molly Burkhart, who's a Native American. Her husband is Ernest Burkhart, who's played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and his uncle, whose name is William Hale, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So William Hale, and his nickname is King. It's probably easier to just call him that.
Yeah.
That's how he was known colloquially.
Well, Molly Burkhart was played by
Lily Gladstone.
Did you already say that?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
But she was like probably, I mean, all three of them were amazing.
Yeah.
But they all three deserve to be mentioned, and they deserve credit for doing an awesome job in this movie.
Yeah.
But the book kind of focuses on the fact that this was the first case that the FBI ever solved.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the first big case.
Yeah.
And it's what shot J. Edgar Hoover to what he became. Just very, very powerful figure in a very powerful organization.
Did you know that he was in charge of the FBI for like 50 years?
I think so, from this book, maybe. Yeah. I saw the trailer and I thought the trailer looked awesome, and then I saw who was directing it, and I was like, and so I was like, I'm gonna read the book. So I read the book before this movie, so I'll be able to kind of talk about how they stack up against each other. But the book focuses on the FBI angle, a lot heavier than the movie does.
The movie doesn't really talk about. I mean, okay, so the movie's 3.5 hours long.
Yeah,
which is absurdly long in my opinion. And the first 2 hours is really about
are really good, and then the next hour and a half just suck.
Do you really think that?
No.
Okay, I was like, what the heck? But like the first 2 hours are really like building the story, and then like the last hour and a half, like the FBI show up and try and solve it.
Right.
And so I really don't think like the FBI angle was a huge part of this story, which is, in my opinion, really too bad, because I mean,
that was probably the most like classically entertaining part of the movie.
Yeah.
Was the court case and their investigation.
Yeah.
And them talking to all the witnesses and the people that you saw in the first 2.5 hours.
And like getting justice.
Yeah.
For
that's the exciting
that
part.
That were wronged.
Right. The sad, dark, slow part is mostly in that first 2-ish hours, 2.5 hours, whatever you said. I think you said 2. But it was very good. It's a Scorsese movie. I'm going to compare it to The Irishman a little bit, because Scorsese has been doing this recently, where he'll release just an absurdly long movie that goes to streaming shortly after it's in theaters.
Because this was made with
Apple
TV. Okay.
And The Irishman was Netflix. So it had like a limited theatrical release, and then it goes to streaming. I saw The Irishman on streaming, and I split it up into 2 parts.
Do you think that was good?
That I really enjoyed it, watching it in 2 parts.
Yeah.
So instead of I think The Irishman was like 4 hours long. Yeah.
So,
what? So it was 2-hour movies for me.
Oh,
and
goodness.
They were like not sitting there for 4 hours. I think lets you appreciate each minute that you're watching. And that's how I felt about The Irishman. Okay. And I loved it. But this one, like sitting through the entire thing, you definitely feel it.
Yeah. And like for me, okay, I would say we are huge advocates of going to the movie theater and supporting films that we enjoy, or like films that we like, because you don't know if you enjoy it before you see it. But like watching things,
I always know.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. But like going to watch things and like supporting them so that they make money, so that they continue making movies like this, you know?
Right.
And I think for me, I love the movie theater experience, but something I really struggle with is staying hydrated and then not going to the bathroom for 3.5 hours was really hard.
Yeah. Holding your peace.
Exactly.
Should we use that as a euphemism?
Maybe.
But you were able to hold your peace pretty well
the whole time
throughout this
which
movie.
Was impressive, but also because I knew it was 3.5 hours long, and that's hard to sit there for 3.5 hours.
So you paced yourself a little bit with your fluid consumption.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was smart.
But I think for a movie that was set in like the plains of Oklahoma, it's visually very pretty.
Yeah, it
I
is.
think they did such a good job of really making Oklahoma. I've never been there, so I don't know. I'm just
Right.
assuming it's nothing.
Yeah.
It's pretty. They shot it very well. It's very well acted. It's very well cast.
And you got to assume there's a reason they kicked the Osage onto Oklahoma.
There was nothing there.
Yeah, because it's just nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry if anyone ever listens to this and they're from Oklahoma. I'm sorry.
We've never been there, so we don't know.
Yeah. The performances are really what like carry this movie, I think.
Yeah.
And I've heard this said a lot, and I kind of agree with it. There are some set pieces that are very beautifully shot, but they're so few and far between. Like I'm thinking of that. Remember when the farm is on fire and you see like all the silhouettes? I think that if I hadn't been in the theater for 3 hours up to that point, I would have been just like,
what?
Ooh.
I even leaned over during the movie and I was like, that looks like a painting.
Right, yeah. It looks amazing. There's a couple of scenes like that. Like when they find the oil too, that's one of the scenes. Like they're all dancing and like the black oil is shooting up out of the ground and it's like crazy cool looking.
Yeah.
So that is a strength of the movie at times, but those parts are not very frequent. So what really needs to glue this movie together is Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, and Lily Gladstone, and they do, I would say.
Yeah. Well, and I think, with a 3.5-hour movie, it's not fast paced.
No,
this movie.
No.
And I think it's amazing the character development in this movie because you can't get that in an hour and a half like other movies.
Yeah.
And, especially like Leonardo DiCaprio, like he's a very flawed character.
Mm-hmm.
And like Robert De Niro's character is, in my opinion, he's not a good person.
Yeah, we're dipping into spoilers a little bit, which is fine. Like we'll just have to label it on the video or whatever. So spoilers coming up if we can.
But they don't hide a lot of this.
Yeah.
Right away you basically know who the bad guy is.
Yeah. And honestly, like if you watched the trailer, you can probably guess who's doing it. I guessed who was doing it, and they don't make a secret of it really.
Yeah.
I can't really remember. I think it's a little bit more of a mystery in the book, but you definitely know by at least halfway through the book. Mm-hmm. So it's not a mystery. If that's what you're expecting it to be, don't expect it to be that. Yeah. I would call this a character study of Ernest specifically, DiCaprio. Because he gets by far the most screen time, and Gladstone and De Niro are the supporting actors in this movie.
Yeah.
But like, he does amazing in this movie, Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
For such a complicated character. I would kind of compare it to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he's sort of this like falling movie star who he's kind of bumbling. He's insecure. He's not the most intelligent person, but also not like a complete idiot. That's how Ernest is in this movie as well. And he's got a lot of conflicting emotions because he loves his wife.
He loves his wife.
The movie makes that pretty clear,
very apparent.
I think. But he also loves his uncle, and he loves money. He says that a bunch throughout the movie. But you start to see like sort of his willingness at the beginning to just go along with whatever his uncle says, and nothing more important than family. We need to make sure that these head rights end up in our hands. To by the end of the movie, he starts to look at himself and look at the things he's done
and have more inner conflict, I think.
Yeah.
He's trying to do the right thing towards the end of the movie, but he's a flawed person who hasn't been making good choices for so many years that it's hard for him to see right and wrong, in my opinion.
Right. And eventually he does. And there's a scene where he's talking to, this is heavy spoilers at this point, but there's a scene where he's talking to De Niro, and he finally has just had enough.
Yeah.
And that was a really well done scene, I thought. That was one of my favorite parts of the movie, because he's like, throughout the whole movie, he's just, okay, yeah, sure, yeah, uncle, that makes sense. You're right, I messed up. You're right. But then by the end, the uncle's still trying to, like, manipulate and whisper sweet nothings into his ear and talk about how he's just as sad as DiCaprio. Because what happens is DiCaprio's daughter dies of whooping cough. Yeah. And that is what flips a switch in DiCaprio's mind, because up to this point, they've just been orchestrating deaths of extended family of Molly, Lily Gladstone's character, so that the headrights can all flow into one direction.
Through Leonardo DiCaprio to De Niro.
Yes.
Right?
So
ultimately,
they're trying...
De Niro wants the headrights.
Everything.
Yeah. He wants all the money. He wants all the land. He wants
right.
everything. And he's using Leonardo DiCaprio to get that.
Because they kill off basically all of Molly's siblings. They don't talk about this in the movie, but in the book, it's implied that her mom was poisoned as well, and that's why she dies. So all of Molly's family dies. All of the headrights go to Molly, and who's Molly married to? Leonardo DiCaprio. DiCaprio is King's nephew, so that's a way for him to get at the money. And throughout the whole movie, DiCaprio hasn't really... It seems like a lot of the characters in this movie don't see natives as people, because there's a couple of scenes, one in particular where this guy befriends one of the Native Americans, and they go out drinking all the time, and he's supposed to kill him, but they just become friends. And you're thinking, okay, he's gonna not want to kill him now because they're friends. But at a certain point, he just decides it's time, and he just shoots him in the back of the head, and they rule it a suicide, of course, because that's just how the story went. Like, people would die in any manner of ways, and it was a suicide. No investigating whatsoever. But my point is that guy that was his friend wasn't really his friend, because he didn't see him as a real person. And that's how Leo DiCaprio's character feels as well, until it happens to his child, and then it hits him, and then he tells King, there's nothing normal about this. Like, this is not... because King says, like, it's just normal life. It's just a tragedy. It happens every day. And DiCaprio's like, there's nothing normal about this. And then he walks away. And I thought that was like... It was very cool to watch his character go through the journey.
Yeah.
I just think that you should probably watch it in pieces if you don't... If you like to support movies like this, and if you love Martin Scorsese, go and watch this in theaters just to support it. But I think you're going to get more enjoyment out of it, or more... the majority of people will enjoy it more if they watch it in pieces.
Yeah. And you can press pause and go to the bathroom.
Yeah, you can do that. That's something you can do. And you can have a puppet corn.
Yeah. A little parental advisory on this movie, though. There is some language. There's not a ton for a rated R movie, but there is some gore, or... I mean, like, it is violent. Like, people do die, and they show people die, but it's not like, they're shooting people and blood and guts are going all over the place, and you see them bleed out. There is... I don't think it's really a spoil. Someone's house gets blown up, and you see a body, and you think that it's fine, and it's gory, it's gross.
Yeah, that's the worst part of the movie.
Yeah.
So you see a woman's body, like, and it looks preserved, even though she just went through a bomb blast.
Yeah.
And they pick her up, and then the camera shows from underneath her, and, like, her head is kind of spilling out.
Yeah.
That's by far the worst part. There's another part where they're doing an autopsy, and they're sawing into the victim's skull. They don't really show that. They show, like, the beginning of it, but they don't focus on that shot. It's more just the sound. And that scene probably lasts like 30 seconds. The bomb gory scene probably lasts like 2 seconds. The rest of it, though, is, I think,
for a rated R movie, I mean, like, it's pretty tame.
Yeah, it's not anything crazy. Like, there's maybe 2 F words in the entire thing.
Yeah.
So compared to, like, Scorsese's older stuff, this is like watching Bluey.
No.
Yeah, just be forewarned. Like, but if you've seen any of Scorsese's other movies, this will be fine. Yeah. I would say even The Irishman is more violent than this. Although I probably need to go back and rewatch it. But do you want to give it a rating?
I think right now, I mean, I'd probably rate it a 7.5.
What's?
Oh, I would rate it 7.5. Oh man.
Loaded revolvers.
I was gonna say
Killers of Moons.
Oh, I can't think of a single thing.
Flowers.
Yeah.
No, I don't like that. Headrights.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll rate it 7.5 headrights out of 10.
Yeah. And I will give it 8 senile De Niro's out of 10 possible senile De Niro's. It's good.
It's good. It's good. It's good.
It is a good movie. Honestly, my enjoyment of it was probably a little lower than an 8, just because of its length. But I think I'm going to enjoy it more. So maybe that's not fair. Maybe I should just give it a 7. Because that's probably how much I enjoyed it on first viewing, and I'm sure it'll go up in the future, but it's not the future yet. The future is now. The future is not now.
The future is now. The future is not now.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. All right. So for our TV show, we wanted to talk about Good Omens 2. And so when did the first season come out? Like 2019, 2020?
It was right before we got married. I think it was 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so basically the show is about an angel and a demon, Aziraphale and Crowley, who become friends. They meet at some point, they meet and throughout history, they meet each other for these little snippets, have an interaction, don't see each other for decades or years, and then meet each other again. And it's basically their heaven and hell's
representatives on Earth.
On Earth.
Yeah. So Crowley's there to tempt people. Aziraphale's there to do angel miracle things. It's never really, I mean, he's there to do basically just miracles, right?
Yeah.
It would seem that Crowley's the busier of the two, just because how many miracles are there versus how many temptations in life.
But he also says, I mean, humans do so much to themselves, he hardly does anything.
Yeah, that's one of the lines I really liked in this second series, because without spoiling what happens at the end of season 1, although if you're listening to season 2, a review about season 2, you probably don't care about what happens to season 1. So I think we're fair. I think it's fair game to talk about.
I mean, it's been 4 years.
Right. So Crowley and Aziraphale are no longer...
They're heaven and hell's representatives. They're now just, I think, an angel and a demon. Or
yeah,
I don't
just
think
living
they
on
really...
Earth. No, they are.
Okay.
Because they still can do miracles, right?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So they are what they are. But they're not there to tempt and do miracles for people. Basically, for those that have not seen or heard of Good Omens, what happens is they grow to love Earth so much that
in the first season,
yes, when they hear that Armageddon is about to happen, they decide that they're going to team up and sabotage it because they don't want the world to end. And by the end of the series, they get kicked out of the angel core and the demon core or whatever. That's not what it's actually called. I'm making that up. But you understand what I mean. And they are sentenced to be like executed. So heaven gets to execute Aziraphale and hell gets to execute Crowley. And
this is a huge spoiler.
They trick them, and they end up getting a deal where they get to just live on Earth, right? So that's where they are at the beginning of season 2. Kind of forgot where I was going with this. That was just a synopsis, I guess, of...
So basically in season 2, it's like the fallout of them no longer being each other, like their representative for their party, and dealing with the fallout of that,
Yeah.
because there's always consequences.
Right.
And it's kind of fun, like watching this show and Aziraphale and Crowley's like interactions and everything, just because they have like such a fun
chemistry
and like
Yeah.
interactions, and like their relationship is so fun, and like their rapport is just so funny.
Yeah, that's the best part of this series is Crowley and Aziraphale. And specifically, I would say the parts that I liked the most of both of these seasons was when they took a Bible story and they twisted it, and they added Crowley and Aziraphale into the Bible story, and that is just the fun. Like, just to give an example, in the first series, they're watching Noah put all the animals onto the ark, and Aziraphale is just like sitting there with just this big goofy shit-eating grin on his face, and Crowley is just like walks up and he's like, "Oh, hey," and Aziraphale's like, "Oh, hi," and Crowley's like, "What's going on?" And Aziraphale, "Oh yeah, God is going to flood the earth and kill everybody except for the people and animals that are going on Noah's Ark right now." And Crowley's like, "He's gonna kill everyone? That sounds like something my lot would do." And he's like, "Oh, but it's okay because he's going to send a rainbow at the end, and that's going to be a promise that he's never going to do it again." And Crowley is like, "Oh, how kind." It's just like these stories that you know from the Bible, but you maybe didn't really think about like how that would play out in real life if that were to happen today. It takes those stories and puts these two opposing entities there, but they behave as if they're real people. So Crowley's just like, that's kind of messed up. He's gonna kill everyone, everyone. And I love those little like parts where they twist the Bible stories and they add the two characters into the scene.
So something I thought was interesting about that show was in the first season, you know, they're obviously friends.
Mm-hmm.
They don't always want to admit it because one is an angel and the other is a demon, and it's against the rules.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I feel like they towed the line between friendship and romance in the first season, and it was always kind of fun because like it left a lot up to like the viewer to like interpret it how they may.
Yeah.
And in the second season, they really leaned more into the romance of it, which I feel like wasn't giving enough credit to like the viewer's imagination.
So what I liked about their relationship in the first season was they definitely alluded to the fact that they might be more than friends, but I always kind of thought of it as like they are supernatural entities, so their relationship kind of transcended the need for them to be like physical in the way that humans are physical, which like that, that was only my perception of what I was watching in the first season and what I read in the book, because this is based on a book, and the first series is the book. Like, it wraps up and starts in the same places. So this is like a continuation. Let me back up a little bit, I guess. So the book was written by two authors, Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, and Terry Pratchett died.
R.I.P.
Yeah, thank you. Should we do a moment of silence? All right, that's long enough. So then Neil Gaiman was the other author. That's probably a name that a lot of people are familiar with. He's done a lot of stuff: The Sandman, The Graveyard Book, Coraline, all that kind of stuff. So he wrote this second series. So it is written by one of the original authors, but I guess the way that I look at the book is they didn't include the physical relationship for a reason. And for me, that reason was they kind of wanted it to be ambiguous, maybe, or if not ambiguous, just like them being soulmates. And they didn't want maybe to, this is me speaking for the authors, I have no idea. This is just how I kind of perceived it, is maybe they are just soulmates and they don't need to be physical, and they want to tell this story in this way. But I guess they could have been planning to do a sequel, and maybe Terry Pratchett died before they got to do the sequel.
Yeah.
So
I also think the way that they did it in the first season and in the book like gives a lot of power to the reader / viewer. Because you get to like imagine it beyond what it is.
If you
and interpret
if you want
it
to,
how
right.
you want,
Yeah.
or just take it at face value and they were really good friends.
Right. Yeah.
Or read into it and there was something there.
Yeah.
And like something about like season 2, it's not like they just dropped, I mean, they just kissed at the end, you know. They
Yeah.
really did have that grow throughout the whole season and have like their own realizations through it, and then they kissed at the end, and it's a dramatic, confusing thing for them.
Yeah.
But I just like it when shows give power to the viewer to
Yeah.
interpret things as they may.
And maybe the reason, so if you haven't been able to pick up on this, we liked season 2 less than we liked season 1, right?
Yeah.
I think we agree on that. But we still liked season 2.
And I would still recommend it
Yeah.
for people to watch, you know?
Right. I think, again, like what I love about this series is when they're doing biblical stories with Aziraphale and Crowley, or they're just doing like a Aziraphale and Crowley adventure together. I think that those two just work so well together. And the first series is all about them loving Earth so much that they're going to try and stop Armageddon, right? Season 2 is kind of, I feel like the purpose of it is to develop their relationship from where it was in season 1 to where it ends up in season 2. That's sort of how I see the second series. That was the reason. That's kind of what it all led up to. That was the climax. But my favorite parts of the show were like the playing fast and loose with the Bible, and the stories in the Bible and the prophecies in the Bible. And there's just a little bit less of that in season 2.
Yeah. And I don't think that it's like blasphemy, this show.
Yeah.
I think it, really brings light to some of like the irony of these things. You know, how God and Satan, had a deal about Job or whatever.
Right. So this is what I would say, like, depending on your faith and how those stories are taught to you, you're going to see the stories in a certain way. And if you are easily offended or like get really defensive about what you perceive as like mistellings of the stories of the Bible, you probably should stay away from this show because it'll probably find a way to offend you. But from the perspective of like, I guess, someone that's atheist, I'm not saying I am, by the way. I'm just saying like I'm thinking that that's where Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman come from.
Interesting.
I don't know that for a fact, but just from watching some of the other things that Neil Gaiman has done and reading some of the other things that Neil Gaiman has written, I sort of get that impression. But if you come to the story of Job as an atheist and you're reading it, it's like, wait a second. So Job was like basically a perfect person, and Satan is like, I bet he'll curse God if I take away his family. I bet he'll curse God if I take away his house and all these riches and all these great things that he has. And God's like, no, okay, let's see if he does. And so that's how it's framed in the show. Like, Crowley shows up with a proclamation from God, and it says, you can do whatever you want to Job and his family and his flocks and his house. XOXO, love God. And Aziraphale is just like, but he's God's favorite. And Crowley's like, oh, well. And he just starts blasting the sheep and just blowing them up. And so like that's probably what that story looks like from an outsider perspective. It just looks like a bet that God has with Satan that Job is going to stay faithful, which like is funny. Like it's funny to think of it that way, but I don't think you need to like take this as gospel. It's just
no. And I, like Brayden said, I mean, you don't need to be religious to find this enjoyable.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like the Bible, like in the United States, the Bible is a fairly well-known, like the stories inside of it.
Right.
And like, it's fun to like have these moments between an angel and a demon and like watch their reactions because they love Earth and they like humans, and their real reactions to like some of the things that have happened.
But I'll also say, like, if you have grown up in a religious household, or you had a religious upbringing and you have read the Bible, there are like tons of like little things that you'll just think are so funny about this show. The example I gave to Micah earlier was in the first season, they give Aziraphale a flaming sword. This is Adam and Eve, by the way, the story. This is where they first meet, Crowley and Aziraphale. And it's Adam and Eve getting kicked out of the garden. And Crowley's like, what happened to your flaming sword? You had a flaming sword. And Aziraphale says that he gave it to Adam because it just looked like Adam needed it more. And so you see Adam off in the distance, like fighting a lion with this sword that's on fire. And that comes from like a little verse in the Bible that says that God puts cherubim and a flaming sword at the east entrance to Eden. And I always was just like, what is, okay, first of all, what's a cherubim? And second of all, why, if cherubim is plural, why one flaming sword? Like, what does that even mean? and this is just how Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett read that verse and added the thing into the show. So like that's an example of like, if you know the story, you're gonna appreciate little details like that.
Did you want to give the parental whatever before?
Oh, sure. I would say.
So I think this is rated TVMA.
Yeah. I'm not sure why.
Language, probably.
Well, but there's like maybe 2 F words in the whole in the whole 2 seasons.
I don't know.
It's really light on language. Like there's really not much. I remember one F word that Crowley says, but that's in the first season, and I can't remember any other ones besides that.
But it's probably language. I mean, because it's British.
Yeah. If you're into British humor, you'll love this, probably. The only parental guidance I would give, besides like the language, there's like maybe one episode where there's Nazis that get sent to hell and then they come back as zombies, and so they're Nazi zombies, which is funny if you've ever played Call of Duty.
Oh my goodness.
But like they come back to Earth and they have to eat brains to survive, but they don't really show anything. It's more just like the sounds and whatever.
Like stuff's spurting across the screen, but like you don't see them.
A little bit graphic, but not horrible. And then obviously, like if you don't feel like you want to watch these Bible stories being changed or being kind of teased or poked fun at, then probably don't watch this. But that's our cat feeder. That's actually Micah's food. It's your dinner time, Micah.
Oh, dinner.
You're missing dinner.
Oh, dang it.
I'm sorry.
Oh. So I think I would rate this show probably 9 Bildad the Shoeites.
Bildad the Shoeite.
Out of 10.
Series 2?
No, the whole show as a whole. I mean, season 2, maybe like a 7.
Bildad
the Shoeites out of 10. Bildad the Shoeites.
Yeah.
Which, go watch the show so you can know that reference.
Nice.
But I think as a whole, like the first and second season, probably a 9.
Yeah.
But
it's still very good.
It's very good.
It's one of the better shows to come out in the last year or so. I'm gonna give this season. You gave it a 7, didn't you?
This season a 7.
Yeah, that's probably what I would give it. I'd give it 7 flaming swords out of 10 possible flaming swords it could have received.
Yeah.
And then the first season's a 10 for me. I love
a 10.
Yeah, I love the first season.
Yeah.
But worth it. Like it's a thumbs up. Whatever way you slice it. Just as long as you're okay with a little bit of
poking fun.
Yeah. Right. Should we move on?
Yeah.
Okay. Are we on books already?
I think we're on books.
Okay. You want to start?
So So the book that I read most recently is this book called Diamond Eye by Kate Quinn.
It's a James Bond novel.
How'd you know?
That sounds like it.
No. But it's about this. She's Russian. Well,
isn't she from Ukraine? She's from Kiev, right?
She's from Kiev, but I mean, I'm sorry.
The Soviet Union.
Yeah, so it's like during the Soviet Union. It's during World War II. Yeah. So this author really likes the historical fiction of World War II. And so I've read a few different books of hers. And this one is really fun because it's not really fun. It's about war. So basically it's about this woman. Her name is Mila Pavlichenko. And she's from Kiev, and she's a student,
Yeah.
and she is living in Odessa trying to finish her degree, and the Soviet Union gets invaded,
Uh-huh.
and basically the same day that they get invaded, she enlists in the army or in the military. I'm not sure what branch she was in or whatever. And she becomes a woman sniper, and she what?
She only snipes women.
Oh, okay, sorry. She's a female, and she's a sniper.
She becomes a woman sniper.
Okay, I'm sorry. That's just what they keep calling her in the book.
I think in Canada they call you a sniper if you're like somebody that everybody likes.
What?
Yeah, like remember we were watching Shoresy, and
okay, this is way off topic.
Okay.
Let me finish the freaking synopsis. So she becomes a sniper, and she has over 300 confirmed kills. And
true story.
It's a true. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a historical fiction,
Right?
And so the author Kate Quinn read Mila Pavlichenko's autobiography, and took liberties with that and wrote this book.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because over 300 confirmed kills, and then during World War II, she goes to the United States to try on like a press tour, and it's basically like join the war.
Yeah.
And she meets FDR,
and she tries to snipe him.
No.
Okay.
And she becomes really good friends with Eleanor Roosevelt. And years later, Eleanor Roosevelt comes to Ukraine on a press tour, and they are friends and all this.
And they become snipers together.
Quit it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
But it was just crazy to me because I knew that this author wrote historical fictions, and I had no idea that this was based on a true story until the end, when the author, gives her notes and is like, this is really happened.
Wow.
I mean, she really had over 300 confirmed kills.
That's crazy. That's a crazy high amount. Because like the dude from American Sniper, how many did he have?
Oh my goodness.
Well, I think it was a lot less, is why I'm saying that. Anyway, sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, that was it. I like this author. I mean, Kate Quinn writes good books if you like historical fictions about World War II. And it's fun because a lot of her books are the women's perspective, which I feel like you don't always get.
Especially for a war.
Yeah.
Yeah, a war book. So because her name has Pavlov in it, did she try to condition the Germans to have Pavlovian responses? Like,
did you read this book?
She would shoot a bullet over their head just to get them to poop their pants? Is that did she do that?
Is that the worst thing that could have happened to them? Is that they pooped their pants?
Yeah. And then she would kill them. And then they died in shame because they pooped their pants. Maybe they shouldn't have been Nazis. Maybe they should have thought of that.
And that's the reason? Because she conditioned them and they were going to poop their pants, and that's the reason they shouldn't have been Nazis.
Well, and they died. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Both of those reasons. So Chris, the American Sniper guy only has 160. So
that is so lame.
Yeah, she's way higher than that. I know, right? Although he didn't get invaded by Germany, so probably had less targets to aim at.
Yeah.
But that's amazing. 300. That's a ton of people. Imagine having killed that many people.
No, I can't even imagine. No, I can't even imagine that.
I mean, I guess like if you had to have killed 300 people, World War II's the war that you would have wanted to do it in, because that's like the most moral. Like, the Nazis were clearly the bad guys in that war.
It's very clear who are the bad guys.
Right. So like if you had to, I'm not saying even for World War II, you probably still have people regretting what they had to do. But if you had to, that's the war you'd pick, right?
I'm glad I don't have to.
Yeah.
So I think I would rate this book like 8.5 snipers out of 10 snipers. I mean, there is language in this book, and they do have some sex, but I mean, it's a war book, and she's Russian, so there's going to be, I don't know, language and all that. But anyways, what book have you read?
So the last book I read was East of Eden by John Steinbeck, and it was good.
Okay, moving on.
All right. So my sister was reading this, and we went home for a week, and she brought it up and asked us if we'd read East of Eden. And to be fair,
To be fair,
it had been on my list for a really long time. I just never got around to it. I decided to read it after the trip, and I read it in like a week. And I texted her and I said, "Hey, are you still reading East of Eden?" She said, "Yeah, I haven't had so much time to read it because I'm in school." Blah 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 blah.
Excuse.
Right, and I was like, because I just finished it, so I finished it, and it was good. It's really good. It's not a very happy book, but I think it's actually pretty poignant, interesting, gets you thinking.
Well, what's it about?
So it's about a family that's growing up in the Salinas Valley in California in the early 1900s. So it ends as World War II has just kicked off, basically. Or sorry, World War I has just kicked off. So that would be around like
the middle of the 10s or whatever.
Huh?
1910s.
Yeah,
so are you saying
yeah,
like World War I just ended or it just started?
No, it starts at the end of this book.
Okay.
And like Steinbeck he's basically retelling the story of Cain and Abel like 2 or 3 times throughout this book, through the generations of the people that are living in this family and the people around them. And it's really good. I don't really want to spoil much of it. Basically, there's a couple of different translations of the story of Cain and Abel. Like the Bible's been not a couple times translated. It's been translated a ton of times. But one of the main themes of this book is about choosing, and like choosing basically how you are going to live and what your life is going to look like. The decisions you're going to make depend on you and not on your circumstances. So the story of Cain and Abel, one of the translations or a couple of the translations make it seem like Cain never really had a chance. It's basically like the translation infers that no matter what Cain does, he's going to be cursed.
In what? The Bible?
In the Bible,
okay.
In one of the translations of that story. But the translation that Steinbeck kind of latches onto, and that the characters have a discussion about these different translations of the story. The one that he latches onto, the word that they use means "thou mayest choose," basically. For Cain, God speaking to Cain, like "thou mayest." So you can choose how your life is going to go based on your actions. This is how your life will go, and you can choose. You're not locked into becoming a cursed, evil person, and that's the main theme of this book. And it's really cool. Like you get to see like situations where one son is loved more than the other son, but and naturally there's jealousy and angry feelings that happen. But even though you have those feelings, you can still choose to be better than those feelings. So I really liked the book. It's slow, so if you're used to reading more modern, I guess more digestible books, this might be difficult to get through. But I'm gonna give it 10 horrible wives out of 10. And if you read the book, you'll understand why that's my metric.
That's so ironic, I feel like.
Yeah. It's really good though. Highly recommend. Okay, separate stuff. What did you watch separately from me?
From you. So I absolutely love trashy TV.
Yeah.
You cannot keep me away from it. I'm talking, the Bachelor franchise. Tried. Oh, yes.
Everyone's tried.
The Bachelor franchise. I haven't watched Love Island, but I'm pretty sure I would like it. Keeping Up with the Kardashians. But most recently, I think I'm completely caught up with the Kardashians, because the Kardashians did a reboot of Keeping Up With on Hulu. And I think the editing of the Kardashians, the reboot, is so much better than Keeping Up. And there's so much drama, and I know that there's a lot of controversy with the Kardashians because they're famous for being famous.
Yeah.
But I think, like, Kim Kardashian especially, she works so freaking hard, and I know you don't agree with me, but she really does. And, like, it's really...
She comes from a working class family.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Her and Victoria Beckham both.
Right, yeah. Honestly, though, like, I want to put this out there. After watching the first, like, 3 or 4 episodes of Beckham, I feel like... Oh, we watched 3?
Yeah.
I feel like Victoria just kind of gets, like, flamed, and she doesn't deserve it.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about that when we finish the show.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Oh, it's not interesting. It's fun to see because Khloe Kardashian and Kris Jenner, they build houses right next to each other. And I think Khloe's is like...
With a little tunnel to connect them.
They wish. I think Khloe's is like $18 million and Chris's is like $20 million. And they do like a tour of it. It's just absurd because who needs a house that big,
Yeah.
For Kris, it's just her and her boyfriend. Nobody else stays there.
Yeah.
And like for Khloe, it's her and her daughter, and sometimes her baby daddy stays there. But I don't know. There's just so much drama, and I love it.
Out of control.
I know. And honestly, it's trash, and I love it. And I would probably give it 10 trash cans out of 10 trash cans.
Nice. For those of you keeping score, the Kardashians gets the same score as East of Eden.
Rightfully so.
They are equally as good as each
so
other.
So good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just the way. That's showbiz, baby. That's how this works. Anything else about the Kardashians?
No, I think that's probably it.
Okay.
What did you watch?
Yeah, let's just do. Well, you can do another one because I technically have 2. If you want.
What did I watch? Oh, right.
Yeah.
I also watched this documentary recently. It's called Biggest Little Farm, and it's about this couple who lives in LA, and they have this dream to own land and start a farm that's like self-sustaining. All of the elements of the farm support other elements of the farm. And so I think it's north of LA that they buy this land.
Mm-hmm.
And this land is like a piece of crap. It sucks. The dirt is so dry and like nothing's going to grow there. And they rehabilitate the land and they like started growing crops, and they get like pigs and sheep and geese and chickens and all this stuff. And it's really interesting because like not only like it is like the story interesting, but also like different elements. I mean, I don't know anything about farming and all of that, and like you can see them learn through this documentary. Like their crops are failing because snails are just eating everything, and they're really struggling with that. And then they figure out if we put the geese in with the crops, they're going to eat all the snails and all the bugs, but the crops are going to be like thrive from that. It was just fun.
Yeah.
It's very well shot. I would probably give it like a 8, 7.5 to an 8. Okay. It's fun.
Yeah. Geese and ducks in a line.
Yep.
Out of 10.
Yep.
Cool. All right. My turn, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I mentioned that I broke my wrist, so I've been working through my... I didn't mention that?
No.
I broke my wrist. But, so I've been working through my backlog of stuff since my broken wrist. And I finally got around to watching Alien and Aliens.
Is that supposed to be the second one?
Aliens is the second one. Because there's more than one alien in the second one.
Dumb.
No, it's not. It's great.
They didn't solve the issue in the first one?
Micah, they solved one issue, but they have at least 2 issues to solve in the second one.
Okay.
You'll have to tune in to find out how it happens, won't you? It's about space aliens.
Oh.
Yeah.
Isn't that
the first? So let me just tell you, okay? You keep interrupting me.
Please tell me.
I'm sorry. I've interrupted you like 1,000 times during this podcast, but you can get me back on the next one, I guess. But the first one is like the first side.
Oh, I just thought of something. I'm just kidding.
You're just practicing?
Yeah, I'm just practicing.
That's fair. The first one is like the first sci-fi horror movie that got big. And It's really good. It holds up. Partly, I think, because they don't show the alien too many times.
Wait, when did it come out?
1980s.
Okay.
I don't remember when. I think the 80s. But it's got Sigourney Weaver. She's like the main character. And through circumstances, they end up with an alien on the ship. And the alien starts... By the way, they're on a ship in outer space.
Okay.
They end up with an alien on the ship, and the alien starts picking off the crew one by one, and it's suspenseful and it's scary, and the alien looks horrifying when you see it. And they just don't show it very much, so it still looks really good. The movie looks really good. It's still very tense, and it's just a really solid, effective, science fiction horror movie. And I might add,
technically a horror movie?
Yeah, I would say so.
Oh.
Yeah. And a little added bonus, it's not super graphic.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, like you could probably handle it. Like I would maybe tell you, there's a famous scene that probably everybody knows about where what happens is like an alien like latches onto your face. They call it a face hugger, and it's like a parasite, and it starts growing an embryo inside the human because it needs it like needs a host, and then eventually it lets go. The face hugger lets go of you, and then it dies.
But it's already planted.
It's planted in there, and then at some point the alien bursts through your chest.
That's hot.
Yeah, that's the part that's like still kind of like, ooh, that's scary. Like imagine how bad that would hurt.
Wait, so when it hugs your face and then it implants in your chest?
Yeah.
How does it get there? Do they...
I don't know.
It stab you, or does it like go through your mouth or something?
Yeah, through your mouth, I think.
Okay, so it's not like they have like an open wound and they don't... Okay, so they don't know that they're a host.
No.
Okay.
So, but like really good. I would give it a solid... It feels blasphemous to give it an 8, so I'm going to give it a 9. Yeah. 9 creepy boys out of 10 creepy boys. Okay. And then there's Aliens, and legend has it. So the first Alien was directed by Ridley Scott, who did Gladiator.
Ridley.
And for the discerning viewer, House of Gucci.
Bruh, he did?
Yeah. So he's dropped off quite a bit since the old days. Sorry if you like House of Gucci, but it is nowhere near as good as Gladiator and Alien.
Oh my gosh.
So he's done some amazing movies, and he's also done some not so great movies. But back then he was in full stride. But the sequel was directed by James Cameron, who did Avatar and Avatar 2 and Terminator 2 and Aliens also. I would say another example of someone who was really good in the 80s and 90s and kind of tapered off.
Is that director?
Yeah, James Cameron. I'm not a huge fan of Avatar and Avatar 2. I think they're just okay.
It's a controversial opinion.
Yeah, it kind of is. Like, I'm not going to hate on you for liking them, but it's just...
Yes, you do.
No, because I think they have value. Like, they definitely have value.
You're definitely judgmental to people that like them.
No.
And if you're one of Braden's friends that likes this movie, just know he is judging you, and he's sorry about it. Tell them you're sorry.
I'm sorry. But, like, I understand why. If you like Avatar, I understand why you like it. I just don't, really.
That's okay.
But Aliens, the legend has it, James Cameron went into a room full of executives and wrote Alien up on the board, and then he wrote an S, and they were like, oh. And then he made the S into a dollar sign, and they were like, tell us more.
That's what we
James.
like to hear.
And so apparently that happened. I don't know if that's true or not, but
that's the rumor.
This movie is better than the first one, in my opinion.
Really?
Yeah, it's more of an action movie because...
And less horror?
Yeah, it's not like stranded out in space. What happens is this is a lot to explain. Basically, they end up on the same planet where they picked up the alien in the first place. Like a whole group of colonists go there, and so a bunch of them get infected.
Oh.
And so there's a bunch of aliens now that need to be dealt with, and so they send these space marines into the thick of it, and they send Sigourney Weaver's character into the thick of it. Do you know what I'm quoting right now?
Is that the Wonder Pets? What is that?
Yeah, maybe. I thought it was the Backyardigans, but maybe it's the Wonder Pet.
That.
It's one of those two things.
Yeah. They're like the same time. So
yeah, right. Anyways, they start off being like super macho, like we're gonna kill these aliens.
Hell yeah.
Hoorah, that kind of stuff. And it's kind of cheesy. Like I remember the first like 20 minutes or 30 minutes of this movie, I was like, all right, when does this get really good? Because I've heard this gets really good. I feel like it's not really good yet.
Does Sigourney Weaver just like yeet a marine into like an alien, and then you're like, hell yes.
That's exactly. How did you know that that's what happens?
I've secretly seen this movie.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, that happens. And
is that what happens?
No.
Okay.
But like they encounter the aliens for the first time, and they just get totally humbled.
Jeez.
Like a bunch of them just die because these aliens are like the perfect specimens, basically. That was established in the first movie. They like bleed acid, so like if you hurt them, then they hurt you back, and they're super strong and super fast and stealthy, whatever. Long story short, this movie's great. Like it's very suspenseful at times, but like adding the action in where they turn Sigourney Weaver into like she was already really cool in the first movie. She's just like a scrappy survivor in the first movie, but in this second movie, she's just like, you know what? I'm going to kill some aliens and I'm going to go save this little girl that I found on this planet. Oh. But like the action is really, really well done.
Okay.
I think like super cool. So I'm going to give this 9.5 scary boys out of 10. Like this is almost a perfect movie. If like I feel bad kind of giving it a -0.5 point for the cheesiness of the beginning, but because I know that's kind of how it's supposed to be. Like those guys are just supposed to be like douchebags, like just ready to get their butts kicked.
Yeah.
But I can't help but not love when movies are written that way, when the dialogue isn't like, I guess it doesn't sound realistic, which it kind of doesn't at the beginning. So that's why I'm giving it a -0.5 point, but it's super good. I would recommend it.
That's fair.
Yeah. Again, not too violent. Like it's violent, like it's rated R, but like compared to some of the stuff that I'm sure a lot of people have seen, you can easily handle this. And I'm not a scary movie fan at all. So the fact that I liked both of these movies a lot, I think like if you are the casualist of casual scary movie fans and you haven't seen this, you should watch it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I think that's it. Do you want to tell them what we're going to be watching this next week?
So I don't know if we'll have it finished by next week, but we're currently watching Silicon Valley, which Braden has already seen and loved it. And so he's like, you have to watch it. So now we're watching it. I didn't think I would like it. And I do. It sucks. But it's basically about like a tech startup in Silicon Valley and these nerdy people, these geeks, and their startup and having to deal with, venture capitalists and funding and all that. But it's good. Yeah. We'll see if we have it finished. And then the other thing we're kind of watching, we're in the first season right now, is Succession. And just, a family, a very well-off family that runs a company and all of their drama. Is that all we're watching right now?
Shoresy as well. So if the purpose of this is if you want to keep up
with what we're doing,
as it were, with the Kardashians, meaning us, even though we're not Kardashians, then you can. This is just to tell you like what we're kind of gonna zero in on.
Hopefully next week.
Yeah, and finish. We're not gonna finish Succession by next week. There's no way. But like Silicon Valley probably won't finish either, honestly.
But we'll, give an update.
Shoresy though, we could finish. Yeah. So if you want to watch that and start watching those other things, then feel free to. I'm giving you permission, basically.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I'm also probably going to finish Wuthering Heights this next week.
Dang, go
Yeah.
off, King.
Thanks. So if you want to try and beat me to finishing it, you're welcome to try. I'm pretty far though.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it for right now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
That was Reviewable.